Today's video is the first of a two-part series in which we will discover the absolute absurdity in the current system we use to determine which baseball players get their own plaque in the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. It's the ultimate honor, and the traditional method for getting in on the initial ballot does not involve former players, does not involve fans who watch every game and spend their hard-earned money to support their team and favorite players. It doesn't involve broadcasters, coaches, or managers, or even most of the media unless you're a member of the Baseball Writers Association of America, or BBWAA. This group has all the power, and as we'll see in the next couple of videos, it's a huge problem for the voting process. Not only do they have personal relationships with players, which means players who were more friendly with the writers get more favorable treatment on the ballot, but there's also a problem with the voting process itself, in that there's a 10-player maximum, which causes clogged ballots as more and more players get snubbed. Generally speaking, there should be two types of Hall of Famers. There's the borderline guys who had impressive careers, but not so great that they just waltz into the Hall of Fame on the first ballot. Guys like Tim Raines and Mike Mussina are players who are deserving of induction, but it's not always 100% obvious by just looking at the name. Then you have the obvious first ballot, no doubt Hall of Famers like the recently elected Ichiro, or the big unit Randy Johnson, or all-time greats like Derek Jeter, Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays, Joe DiMaggio, and Babe Ruth, who all got in on the first ballot, right? Well, actually not. One of those names I just mentioned got denied on the first ballot, and for today's video, we'll be looking at the top 20 Hall of Famers who were eventually voted in by the BBWAA, but despite being some of the greatest of all time, 100% shoe-in, no doubt Hall of Famers, they failed to reach the 75% threshold on the first ballot, which is completely mind-blowing when you hear some of these names. What's even crazier is that many of them did not get in on the second, third, fourth, or fifth ballot either. For simplicity's sake, I'm not including steroid guys like Bonds, Clemens, and A-Rod, since we know why they didn't get in. I'm only talking about current, obvious, and legendary Hall of Famers who were eventually elected but somehow got snubbed on the first ballot. So let's get into the video and get ready for some crazy facts.
Warning: the following content may be disturbing, shocking, or repulsive to some viewers.
Let me run through 5 quick honorable mentions just so you know how amazing these names are about to be. And these are guys who did not make it on the first ballot, and they're just my honorable mentions. Fergie Jenkins, 1971 Cy Young Award winner, 284 wins, 3,192 strikeouts, and retired as the only pitcher to ever strike out 3,000 batters while walking less than 1,000. He was elected on his third ballot. Gaylord Perry, 2 Cy Young Awards, 314 career wins, and 5 20-plus seasons, elected on his third ballot. Roy Campanella, 3 MVPs, 11 All-Star selections, and a batting title, elected on his 7th ballot. Craig Biggio, over 3,000 hits, a 281 career average, 7 All-Star selections, 5 Silver Sluggers, and 4 Gold Gloves, elected on his third ballot. Jeff Bagwell, a 297 career average, 449 home runs, a Rookie of the Year, Gold Glove, MVP, and 3 Silver Sluggers, elected on his 7th ballot. And those are just the honorable mentions. Let's get into the top 20. Number 20, Phil Niekro. Niekro pitched for so long and won so many games, I just assumed he had to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but he wasn't. Throughout a 24-year career, he won 318 games, struck out 3,342 batters, made 5 All-Star teams, won 5 Gold Gloves, and finished in the top 6 for the Cy Young 5 times. That wasn't enough for him to get in until his 5th ballot. Number 19, Mike Piazza. Piazza, like Bagwell, might have lost some votes due to steroid suspicions, but that sure didn't stop them from voting in Ivan Rodriguez and David Ortiz on their first ballot. But I won't open that can of worms today. Based just on the numbers, Mike Piazza was an obvious first ballot Hall of Famer, with 427 bombs, a career .308 average, 12 All-Star teams, a Rookie of the Year, and 10 Silver Sluggers. He also broke the catcher home run record, but was not elected to the Hall of Fame until his 4th ballot. Number 18, Ryne Sandberg. If Niekro and Piazza were not obvious enough, here we have an absolute, no doubt, 100% Hall of Famer, one of the greatest second basemen to ever play, Ryne Sandberg, who made 10 straight All-Star teams, won 9 Gold Gloves, 7 Silver Sluggers, and an MVP, and he shockingly got less than 50% of the vote in 1993 and was not elected until his third ballot. Number 17, Duke Snider. During the 50s, the 3 big center fielders were Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, and Duke Snider. Maybe Snider's career numbers didn't quite match up with the other two, but he was still obviously a Hall of Famer with over 400 home runs, 8 All-Star selections, and 6 top 10 MVP seasons. On his first ballot, he got an incomprehensible 17% of the vote, and it took 11 years to finally get voted in. Number 16, Rollie Fingers. One of the best closers in MLB history, a player who was so good at his craft that he won an MVP and Cy Young Award closing out games and finished his career with an MLB record 341 saves. Rollie Fingers got just 65.7% of the vote on the first ballot. Thankfully, he did get in on his second. Number 15, Trevor Hoffman. Maybe we can give the writers a pass for Rollie Fingers since there was little precedent for relievers in the Hall of Fame. But how could they fail to elect Trevor Hoffman on the first ballot, a man who retired as the first pitcher to ever close out over 600 games, and he did so with a 2.87 career ERA. The 7-time All-Star got 67% of the vote in 2016, and it took 3 ballots to finally get in. Number 14, Eddie Matthews. Apparently hitting 500 home runs isn't enough to automatically get you in the Hall of Fame, as the legendary Eddie Matthews hit 512. And neither is 12 All-Star selections, 2 home run titles, 2 World Series rings, and 3 top 10 MVP seasons. The legendary Brave got an unbelievable 32% of the vote in 1974 and did not get in until his 5th ballot. Number 13, Hank Greenberg. Hank Greenberg was one of the top hitters in baseball for about a decade before losing out on 3 seasons due to World War II. Pre-war, he won 2 MVPs and led the league in RBIs 3 times, driving in an insane 184 runs in 1937. He could also hit for average and was consistently well above 300, retiring with a .313 career batting average. After the war, he returned to lead the league in homers and RBIs in 1946, but the writers decided since he only played 12 seasons, he did not deserve induction, and in 1949 he got 43% of the vote. Greenberg was not elected until his 9th ballot. Number 12, Carlton Fisk. One of the toughest and most durable catchers to ever live, Carlton Fisk played for 24 years in the league, made 11 All-Star teams, won a Rookie of the Year, Gold Glove Award, and 3 Silver Sluggers, crushing 376 home runs, breaking Johnny Bench's home run mark for a catcher, yet he was snubbed by the writers in 1999 when he got just 66.4% of the vote. Fisk was thankfully elected on his second ballot in 2000. Number 11, Vladimir Guerrero. A more recent player who many of us watched play, Vlad Guerrero Sr. was one of the most pure and talented hitters to ever live. He made 9 All-Star teams, won 8 Silver Sluggers, and could hit for average and power like few others, hitting over 300 for 12 straight seasons and consistently crushing 30-plus home runs every year. He retired with 449 home runs, a .318 average, and .379 on-base percentage. I remember being absolutely shocked when he got just 71.7% of the vote in 1999, but he was elected on his second ballot. Number 10, Harmon Killebrew. From here on out, the names will get more and more ridiculous. Harmon Killebrew played for 22 seasons, crushed 573 home runs, made 13 All-Star teams, and won an MVP. There is absolutely no excuse for him not getting 75% of the vote, but it happened 3 times. In 1981, he got less than 60% of the vote and was not elected until 1984, an absolute atrocity I'll never understand, and we're just now getting into the top 10. Number 9, Eddie Collins. One of the greatest hitters of the early years of the modern era, Eddie Collins retired with 3,315 hits, a .333 batting average, and multiple MLB records that he still holds to this day. He hit .328 in the World Series and won 5 rings, games, and he won the MVP award in 1914. Collins was not voted in on the inaugural Hall of Fame ballot in 1936. And okay, we'll give the voters a break since it was the first one, and I'll get more into that a little later, but he was also snubbed in 37 and 38, and he barely got in with 77% of the vote in 1939, his fourth ballot. Number 8, Yogi Berra. For many, the greatest catcher of all time, the legendary Yankee Yogi Berra, the man who won 3 MVPs, made 18 consecutive All-Star teams, won 10 rings, and set all sorts of postseason and regular season records. One of the biggest names in baseball history, an obvious, no-brainer Hall of Famer who should have easily gotten in on his first ballot, did not. In 1971, Yogi Berra got 71% of the vote, and if you're wondering if it was a crowded ballot, no one was elected that year. He did get in 72, but it's absolutely wild that Yogi Berra was not a first ballot Hall of Famer. Number 7, Mel Ott. Almost every baseball fan knows about Mel Ott, the powerful left-handed hitting outfielder for the New York Giants. Despite being just 5'9", he could hit homers like few others and led the National League in round trippers a then record 6 times. He made 11 straight All-Star teams and crushed 511 career homers, a National League record at the time, and he even retired with a batting average of .304. Not only could he crush home runs, but he could get on base with a career on-base percentage of .414. He led the league multiple times in walks and tied a record with a walk in 7 straight plate appearances. He also holds an MLB record, leading his team in home runs for 18 straight seasons. His resume is absolutely next level, which makes it all the more stunning that Ott got just 61.4% of the vote in 1949 and didn't get in until his third ballot. Number 6, Grover Cleveland Alexander. Simply one of the greatest pitchers of all time, Grover Alexander was a starter who had a sub-2 ERA for 6 consecutive seasons, and he also led the league in wins 6 times, which included 3 30-win seasons. Alexander set a National League record with 90 career shutouts, a record he still holds and perhaps forever will. He retired with 373 wins, 436 complete games, and a career 2.56 ERA. Even during his time, his numbers were ridiculous, which makes it all the more unbelievable that he was snubbed on that initial 1936 Hall of Fame ballot, receiving 24.3% of the vote. And he was snubbed on his second as well, not getting in until his third ballot. Number 5, Jimmy Fox. The top 5 will all be legends of the game who even the casual baseball fan has heard of. And it starts with Jimmy Fox, who smashed 536 career home runs and won not 1, not 2, but 3 MVPs. He won 2 batting titles, 3 home run titles, and retired third all-time in OPS, trailing just Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. In fact, he is 6th all-time even today with a 1,038 career OPS. Fox drove in over 100 runs for 13 straight seasons, topping 163 times, and had a career .325 batting average after playing for 20 years. How many ballots do you think it took for Fox, one of the greatest baseball players to ever live, to get elected? It took 7 ballots. And in 1946, get ready for this, Jimmy Fox got 12.9% of the vote. Number 4, Joe DiMaggio. Joltin' Joe DiMaggio was not a first ballot Hall of Famer. The 3-time MVP who famously got a hit in an MLB record 56 consecutive games and is one of the most legendary players to ever don a uniform was snubbed not once, not twice, but 3 times and did not get in until his 4th ballot. In his first 2 ballots, he didn't even crack 50%. Joe DiMaggio's resume doesn't even need to be read off. You just see his name and you know, that's a Hall of Famer. But for anyone not sure, this is a 13-time All-Star, 9-time World Series champion, 2-time AL batting champion, and as mentioned, he won 3 MVPs. His numbers would have been even more impressive had he not missed 3 seasons for military service during World War II. It's an absolute travesty. Joe DiMaggio was not a first ballot Hall of Famer, and we still have 3 more to go. Number 3, Rogers Hornsby. By most accounts, he was the greatest right-handed hitter to ever live. Rogers Hornsby's numbers are on another level entirely and include 3 seasons in which he hit over 400. He won 7 batting titles, 6 consecutively, and took home 2 MVP awards, and also had power, leading the league in home runs twice. He also won not 1, but 2 Triple Crowns, leading the league in home runs, batting average, and RBIs twice. He has the modern era MLB record for a single season batting average at .424 and hit .358 for his career. There is no excuse for not voting for Rogers Hornsby, regardless of who else was on the ballot. But he was notoriously difficult to get along with, and his relationship with the writers wasn't that great, and that had to be part of the issue. When you look at the 1938 ballot, his third ballot, and see that he got 17.6% of the vote. 17.6% for a guy with 2 Triple Crowns, 2 MVPs, 7 batting titles, over 300 home runs, about 3,000 hits, and a .358 career average. Hornsby was not elected until his 5th ballot. Now for the top 2, and for these top 2 we go back to that inaugural 1936 ballot. Now we have to give the voters some leeway because it was the very first, so they were more selective, and there was no precedence to know exactly what a Hall of Fame career looked like. Also, the vote was split into 20th century and 19th century pools, and voters for each could choose up to 10 players, making the ballot quite bloated. They also were aware that the first induction ceremony would not take place until 1939, so they had a few years to make sure they selected all the deserving Hall of Famers. So a few big names didn't quite get in on that first ballot. A couple I've already mentioned, like Eddie Collins and Grover Alexander. There were other amazing snubs like Nap Lajoie, George Sisler, and Bill Terry, but because of the circumstances, I can understand how some of them missed out on the first ballot. But for these top 2, there is no way to comprehend how they could ever not get elected to the Hall of Fame on a Hall of Fame ballot, regardless of the circumstances. Number 2, Tris Speaker. When I think of the greatest hitters of the early 20th century, 3 guys come to mind: Babe Ruth, Ty Cobb, and Tris Speaker. Speaker still holds the MLB record for career doubles with 792, and he led the league in doubles 8 times. He hit over 318 times, and it was usually well above 300 as he finished his career with a .345 career batting average. He was also an AL MVP, batting champion, home run champion in 1912, and RBI leader in 1923. His career spanned 22 years, and he retired with 3,514 hits, second in the history of the game, only to Ty Cobb when he retired. And he is still 5th all-time in hits. But the inaugural Hall of Fame voters decided he was not good enough, and they elected just 5 players: Cobb, Ruth, Honus Wagner, Christy Mathewson, and Walter Johnson. Tris Speaker got 58.8% of the vote. Number 1, Cy Young. Believe it or not, Cy Young, statistically the best pitcher to ever live, a man so legendary that the annual award for the best pitcher in each league is named after him, was snubbed on the 1936 ballot. Cy Young got 49.1% of the vote in 1936 and barely made it in the next year with 76%. This is a baseball player who to this day holds the MLB record for WAR, wins, and complete games with a mind-blowing 749 complete games. More complete games than most Hall of Fame pitchers even pitched throughout their entire careers. Sure, he played in a different era, but even during his era, he was the best of the best, and at one point, threw 25 1/3 consecutive hitless innings. That's nearly 3 straight no-hitters, which is also an MLB record. Fortunately, Cy Young was elected on his 2nd ballot and was honored in the initial 1939 ceremony, but it's absolutely wild that he wasn't a first ballot Hall of Famer, and Cy Young has to come in as my number 1 first ballot snub. And that'll do it for today's video. I hope you found it interesting. Let me know your thoughts on the current process. And trust me, it's not just about getting in on the first ballot. That's ultimately not the biggest issue, because the important thing is to get deserving Hall of Famers a plaque. And if it takes 2 or 3 years, that's not the end of the world. But in the next video, we'll look at some of the greatest players of all time who not only didn't get in on the first ballot, but never got in at all on the writer's ballot and had to be saved by the Veterans Committee. When that video's live, I'll link it above. Hit that thumbs up and subscribe button if you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk to you in the next one.